in Norway, we had a referendum in 1972 on joining the common market. We rejected that quite overwhelmingly. And then again, we had a referendum in 94 about joining the EU. And we also said no then. We've had almost every month since the referendum in 94, there have been conducted opinion polls in national newspapers on EU membership. And for the past 11 years, there have been a no majority. There's been a majority in favor of not joining. And for the past 6 years, that majority has been around 70%. The last poll is on EU membership could say that 72% of those asked were against Norwegian EU membership, 72%. So I think we are quite safe outside, and I think it's quite safe to say that we will stay outside for some time. So the EEA, well, I'm not going to say the European Economic Area because it takes too long, and I got lots of things to say. So the Eea Agreement, Norway has been part of that since 1993. It's basically the single market, but also including, of course, the free movement of goods, capital, services, and labor. But what is more important, I think, is what the EEA does not cover. So we have fisheries, agriculture, monetary policy in the euro, trade policies towards third countries, and the whole question of the common foreign and security policy. All those areas are not covered either. So that, I'm just going to say a little bit about each of them. So the common agricultural policy, the CAP, Norway is not in that. It's not part of that. Norway is, as you may know, is a very long country, and great parts of our country is north of the Arctic Circle. So we have challenges, as you say, or problems. No, but it's sort of because it's so long, and because we have agriculture in Norway is a challenging business, to be honest. And we also have seen a tendency with the CAP that they favor bigger farms, and we don't have that many of those in Norway, to be honest. We have the CAP, which has included overproduction of butter. I remember butter mountains, wine lakes, milk lakes, because they were sort of storing those products to keep the price artificially high, so the farmers would earn money. Lots of farmers in this country is dependent on support from the EU, and I would say in Norway, because we're outside, the Norwegian farmers do not get support from the EU, of course, but it is so that every year the farmers' organizations negotiate with the government about subsidies. So the Norwegian farmers receive state subsidies, and it's crucial for them to get this subsidy in order to survive, to have a viable business, to be honest. But the Norwegian agriculture policy is decided by ourselves, and it's suited to local needs, to national demand, so we can actually have an agricultural policy that suits us in Norway. So the fisheries policy, the fish is Norway's, how can you say, national property. In the EU, Britain as well, are bound by the common fisheries policy. I've just been, 2 weeks ago, I was in Scotland, up in Aberdeen, And I saw and heard how disastrous the common fisheries policy have been for fishing in this country. It's just a disgrace. Many tens of thousands of people have been forced out of their business. We heard stories that in the waters that certain zones were like, okay, British waters, but they were given away to other fishermen in other countries. In Norway, fish has always been very important to us. We have a long coastline, we have a lot of fish, and it's been a key argument against EU EC membership. And we have managed to have a sustainable fisheries policy. We had a lot of fish in 72 and in 94, and we still have a lot of fish, unlike the EU. And because the EU has sort of been overfishing and depleting stocks over time, they've had to go to other countries, like in Africa, where they've concluded fisheries agreements with third countries there, and the EU pays the government in an African country, for instance, for access to their water, but it is the local fishermen who suffer. They have been robbed, basically, from an income, but also from a source of protein. And I think when things like that happen, you cannot, some of them would look elsewhere to earn a living, and some of them will come to the EU or to the European continent to try to make a new life for themselves. Outside the EU, Norway is able to have its own foreign and trade policies. We can conclude our own trade agreements. Norway has at the moment about 27 bilateral trade agreements with lots of countries in the world. A lot of them are through our membership of the EFTA, the European Free Trade Association. But in the EU, when new trade agreements are concluded, it is the EU Commission who negotiates on behalf of all 28 member states. This non-elected body, I would say comprising of, not all of them, but a lot of them, ex-politicians of various varied quality, to be honest. And when it comes to the British EU Commissioner, Lord Hill, he's never ever been elected to anything, and he is negotiating on behalf of the EU. And some people call that democracy. I doubt it very much. Outside the EU, Norway can have an independent foreign policy, and that means that we are a global player, sort of punching above our weight class, if you can say that. We have been the driving force for within biodiversity, the environment, climate change, rainforest. We're behind an international agreement to limit the use of toxic mercury, for instance. So Norway has been able to do all this. Norway has, how can you say that? Norway's in this high regard in the UN system. I was part of the official Norwegian delegation to the UN General Assembly in New York a few years ago. And just saying you were from Norway, we was like, oh. No, it really, and I hadn't expected that. I mean, I knew Norway sort of did a good job, but it was really astonishing. But also, more importantly, really, that the Norwegian UN people that were at the mission, they didn't know I was really from Nei Til EU. I was representing a women's organization. But they sort of, when you're chatting to them, they said, oh, but by the way, the British, no, not the British, the Swedish and the Danish representatives in the UN, they're coming to us to ask if we can put forward motions on their behalf because they haven't succeeded in getting through the EU system. So, and I thought that was very striking. So it really is, and actually since 2011, The EU has been speaking with one voice in all the committees of the UN, not in the plenary sessions and not in the Security Councils, but anyway. So, and I think it's bad that the EU sort of takes back the right of member states of the UN to be heard on a global international level. I think the EU needs more, not fewer, independent voices. So I think that's very bad. In the debate in Britain, it's been said that Norway pays to access the single market. That is not true. Norway pays not a single kroner, pound or euro to access the single market. We pay for our participation in some research programs, student exchange programs, and some of the bureaus of the EU, but we do not pay into the EU budget as such. We have a thing called Eea grants, which are money towards Eastern and Southern European countries, but it's a bilateral agreement. I mean, they're not sort of diverted via Brussels. So we do not pay to access the single market. One myth in the debate here in Britain. It's also been claimed that we are 75% members and we are governed by facts. That is not true either. We've done a survey, but other people have as well, and it shows that about 25% of all the EU legislation we have to incorporate in our legislation. So it's only 25% if you say that. And in the period from the year 2000 till 2013, Norway only had to incorporate 9% of all EU legislation. So I think that's very important. Also, we have the right to veto a directive. We've done it once without retaliation from the side of the EU. That has also been claimed by the Remain side in this country, that if you veto a directive, they will retaliate. They didn't do that. Unfortunately, that veto was reversed by the current government, but nothing happened, really. We believe that the European Economic Area Agreement is much better than EU membership, but it is still too much EU policy for us. We would rather have a trade agreement with the EU. In Norway, it's always been key to us to defend a vibrant democracy, and it's been sort of the argument against EU membership that we want to be an independent country also in the future. I feel confident we don't have to, outside the EU, we can have a democracy where people participate, where the politicians are held to account, and where we don't have to go all the way to Brussels to influence policies. We are better off outside. Thank you.